right, I suppose it's as good a time as any. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And it's really a pleasure being here again to welcome you this year. It's certainly a most interesting event looking at this program. And you see, 2 weeks ago, I was at another event in Amsterdam. And at this conference, we had about 24 regulators from the EU, so European Commission, EMA, etc., and local regulators. And one of the things they repeated again and again was, we need to make more of our products here in Europe, number one. Number two, we also need to have a more secure supply chain, a more robust supply chain. And of course, all of this remains wishful thinking unless the industry is also on board with us. But for industry to be successful, no matter where in the world, there have to be incentives and there has to be operational excellence. And really, it's the latter, the operational excellence, is why we are here. And so with this program, as I mentioned, we have wonderful presentation topics, and I'm sure they will have a wide interest, and I'm sure there will be more people coming, so don't worry. It's still early in the morning. But we also have a lot of exhibitors, and we definitely have a lot more than we had last year. So please, I encourage everyone to go and visit. Now, this event would not be as successful were not for the sponsors, who are RSSL and GEA. And a big thank you to them and the organizers, of course, and last but not least, to you here to attend this event. So before we can start the program, just a few housekeeping rules. It's a non-smoking environment, so please go outside for smoking. And in the case of fire, please follow the exit signs and kindly switch off your phones to silent. Now, and there's a little hint, if you want to go to the other event, you're very welcome to go there as well. You can either go all the way around, or you can sneak through behind here, and there's a door that leads through to the other room. I haven't told you that. Anyway, so without further ado, here now our first speaker, who is Hitesh Varambhia, and he's going to speak to us about Change is Coming. Are You Pharma 4.0 ready? Hitesh, please.
Dankeschön, Siegfried. It's good, I think, in terms of where we are, and I'm going to stick to the script, by the way, because I had it planned, and it's going to turn out to be quite funny when we do this. But no, I agree with you. I think in terms of OEE, operational efficiencies, and doing some of the things that we need to be doing, Natalie Moll a few weeks ago, I think the second week of May, was talking to the BBC with regards to the way that Europe and FP are pitching up the stall in terms of trying to attract more business, more molecules and things. And it's going to be interesting because at the moment, you know, protectionism, North America, and the way Europe will need to compete is going to be quite interesting. So my talk track here is really around Change is Coming, it's inevitable. And are you ready for Pharma 4.0? So I want to start with thank you to Amandine, Don, and Kevin et al. For inviting me here to CTC Meets MCL, right, 2023. And it's my first time here at this event, but not to the venue or to the location. But it's a wonderful venue anyway, as long as people know how to find it. I think I stuck to the script of saying it's a full house, so I'm going to stick with that. You know, and it's great to see familiar faces and to connect with people. So I think, you know, in the wise words, in addition to learning and business, please take the opportunity to make new friends and make new connections. It's an event. What you put in is what you get out. And I think I agree with Siegfried, more people will turn up. It's very early doors for the UK population, I think. It's just gone 9:15, right? So, and on that note, be kind. In the wise words of Don Fairs, he said, you'll get the most out of this if you let your hair down. And if you know what Don looks like, you'll smile. But in terms of the next 2 days, it's going to be really interesting, interactive, and packed full with great content, good speakers. And in order to judge the pace and the tone here, I'm going to keep it fluid because it's a small, nice, snug audience. And I just wanted to understand, how many of you are here for the first time? Just raise your hand. Way, cool. All right, me too, but to this event, not the venue. And in terms of how many of you from pharmaceuticals? Okay, cool. Engineering? Wonderful. And then from biologics or biomanufacturing? Cool. Makes a nice, cozy foursome. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. And then in terms of device manufacturing? Okay, good. Cell and gene therapy? Okay. And then emergent technologies or things right at the innovative and cusp of, okay, cool. May I ask what it is? Interesting. You and I need to catch up after this. I can talk a lot about plant-based stuff, having worked for a tobacco company that funded a 550 people biotech startup. Okay. And then facility design and construction. Cool, thank you. All right, so how many of you know this subject matter? Pharma 4.0, okay, it's cool. So most of you will learn something hopefully today. I wanted to start off with three quotes or laws, if you like. When a distinguished but elderly scientist or engineer states that something is possible, he or she is almost certainly right. And when he or she states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. The second law is the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them and into the impossible. Now, those two quotes aren't famous. The third quote from Arthur C. Clarke is, and it's around the three laws that he made famous, which is any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And with that, if it works. Next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, I could do this. Could do a proper Valence, couldn't I? Next slide, please. You'll know that if you were in the UK for COVID. No, go back. So what I want to talk about is innovators and game changers. And you can't really hold them back, nor can you hold back change. And change is the only constant, as my procurement folks over at Novartis used to tell me. Change is the only constant. So we need to adapt and evolve, as does the COVID virus, humanity, and our embracement of technology. So evolution, and I'm using the game analogy to reflect pharma, cleanroom technology, and also chemical manufacturing. I don't know, most of you are old enough to know the game Pong, if you remember it, how basic it was. It was a tennis game that came out on a platform in the late 70s. And if you fast forward now, look at the immersive technologies that exist. Nintendo are quite famous at the moment, and they will be as and when Tetris is released as a feature film as well. And we'll then talk about protectionism and global challenges back in the 80s, right? The other side of this is also that, I don't know if you guys know, but a company called NVIDIA that makes graphics cards are actually utilizing the latency capacity in their digital capabilities of their graphics cards to start computational machine learning and analytical diagnostics. And it's been used at a rapid pace to apply to things like genomic sequencing, for example. And if you look at the pace at which things change, it took years to sequence the whole entire genome. And we've managed to get the technology down to weeks, days, and now hours. This time last year, the new world record was set for sequencing an entire genome for a pediatric patient, and they did it in 17 hours. Yeah, so it just gives you an understanding of it's taken decades to get the entire chain, and then when time goes on, you're now talking about hours. And imagine you're a terminally ill patient. You know, what does that mean to you? Because you get your results quickly. You know, if you've got cancer, you may only have weeks to live or days. And getting that result quickly helps success and survival rates and everything else that's associated with the condition. What's quite interesting in terms of topic at the moment is around regulation and ChatGPT and other bits and pieces. And I'm going to reference James Fern, who's a lecturer in health. And he, at the University of Bath, put ChatGPT to the test because he wanted to see if it could answer his students' questions and pass, and it didn't. So there's still a degree of human intervention that will fail citations on the training, and the AI didn't actually pass that. Earlier this month, Steve Wozniak talked about the impact of AI and the scams and how the bad actors, malicious intrusions, and how regulatory folks will need to get it right. And we've got some great speakers later on that might deep dive into those types of discussion points. Algorithms, I mean, I'll ask the question to the audience, you know, are algorithms safe? Who thinks they're safe? No one's put their hand up, just say. In terms of safety, you know, are they making the right decision? So I test this. I put a question into Bing, and I said, create an image with Mario and Luigi in a pharmaceutical setting. Next slide, please. And that's what came up. It's quite interesting in that sense, because, yeah, if you know the characters, you'll be able to see that's a bit of a fake, because Luigi doesn't have an L on his hat, doesn't look like Luigi, doesn't look friendly either. So does it work? You know, this is testing the truth. You ask the AI, you ask to put the picture together, and it spewed this out. What I wanted to talk about here on this slide really was around technology outpaces ethics, and the battle is always balancing ethics with technology, right? And the science advances so fast that it outpaces regulation. Again, we need the real-time rapid mechanisms in place so that we can bring it back and make equilibrium again, you know, and bring back a sense of balance. A good example was a few years ago, Audi were launching a new technology in the US, and it was a headlamp LED configuration, and they delayed the launch because the regulators and the approvers of the automotive industry within North America didn't understand the technology. So it had an impact on their launch, and they had to educate the regulators in order to get that out to market. So there's an example of, you know, technology outpacing regulation and people's understanding of it. It's not as bad as it's an automobile. It's not as life-threatening as an illness or something else. But again, you can see that we have to work in tandem as we leap in technology. On the 22nd of September 2020, the FDA launched Digital Health Center of Excellence, and devices and radiological health and digital advancements within technologies, including mobile health, and devices associated with software as a medical device, but also those including wearables used as medical devices and technologies used to study medical products. Fast forward to this year, and the MHRA are also announcing the amalgamation of two of their silos around clinical research development and also devices. So it shows how the industry and regulation is changing and adapting into alignment with the way technology advancements are going. And I think, you know, the importance piece here is that recognizing digital health technologies are allowing for rapid development and rapid review. And we're going to get to a point where it'll be seamless and it'll be in real time, okay? So next slide, please. So the overview of the conversation today will be around introduction to Pharma 4.0, the key drivers for change, the impact on the drug production itself, key technology enablers, and then data-driven approaches, regulatory considerations, and there are speakers here that will deep dive into that, as well as some of the secular discussions associated with ESG and other bits and pieces. There's some impacts on workforce transformation associated with this. If you heard in the media, you know, there's a huge impact, 60% automation or optimization, resulting in, 40% of the population, people not being able to work, and other bits and pieces associated with that. But we'll get onto that later in the discussion. And then implementing 4.0, as well as then the challenges and the risks associated with that, and a wrap up at the end. So next slide, please. Okay, a little bit about me. And I'm going to talk about the career and touch points, as well as going through what I've done historically in my career. I've done some amazing work, I think as part of the pandemic response within the UK Health Agency, appointed at merit with the civil service, part of Department of Health and Social Care as well, within NHS Test and Trace, under Baroness Dido Harding and Jenny Harries. I was asked to bring a wealth of life sciences experience and intelligence and give counsel and guidance on, I can only say on steroids, because the change of pace and what we did and how we reacted and how we responded has brought us all here physically today. We could still be in a state of lockdown, still trying to find a vaccine and still trying to fight the virus. In the sense of my life sciences and pharma experience, I'll get onto that in a bit, but doing things at scale, resolving it, and working effectively to tight deadlines under pressurized environments, it's a bit of fresh air to meet folks face to face and actually drop a few gears, if you like, with regards to public sector experiences, as well as my international skill set spanning over 20 years within CPG, pharmaceuticals, and healthcare and life sciences. As a trusted advisor and consultant as well, I've delivered and executed strategy and leveraged a lot of things around digital maturity, transformation, procurement, and other bits and pieces in terms of programs associated with technology and services across government, FTSE 100 and Fortune 500 organizations. Education, I'm a fan of Deming, and when I started at Mars, one of the first things as a reliability engineer was to look at optimization. And I remember having to go around to all of the key equipment, put in a 3.5-inch floppy, download the PLC data or the HMI data, and then translate that back on my desktop in order to present at morning meetings around operational improvements and operational efficiencies and the way the lines were performing. And you fast forward to today, you get it instantly, you can have it on an app on your phone, etc. But it just shows you the state and the pace of change. Tinsys, Rockwell, PLC data's productivity charts, mean time between failures, and operational efficiency. The reason I'm in pharma or life sciences is because I put a quality management system in for Starburst. I did such a good job on that, they asked me to look at Tunes and Lockets. Now, Tunes and Lockets had a pharmacovigilance license, and coming into Eli Lilly after Mars, it was an eye-opener because I was exposed to things like validation, CSV, and balancing automation and line with regulation. And then at Philip Morris, computational chemistry, we were doing a lot of stuff around digital biology, and I introduced them to digital biology. Some of the stuff that now AstraZeneca and Mene is doing with regards to digital biology and digital chemistry. You'll hear about digital twins. Siemens have a great playbook on how they're bringing digital twins and computational science to biologics, processing, and such things. In terms of Philip Morris, it was an interesting gambit in the sense that it's a tobacco company funding a 550 people biotech startup, research and development using the tobacco plant on the basis that it is supply chain disruptive because it grows in cold and hot temperatures, and the transgenic meganuclease manipulation of the tobacco plant to introduce vaccines was a disruptive game changer for us. And I put the processes in Switzerland that were then the cookie cutter for what they did over in Singapore. And then, fast forward moving to F. Hoffman LaRoche and Genentech, looking at visual inspection systems, quality, go, no-go, decision-making criteria, and then getting really into the technical side of it with Spark Therapeutics, and also with regards to then moving into Supply Chain Wizard, which was all about digital factory optimization and using technology as a layer in order to make better decisions with the data through dashboards, and then obviously getting competitive advantage on the decisions that were made with the clients there. That naturally led me on to serialization and track and trace and system development lifecycle aspects. I mean, I was doing a gamification for a pediatric study for one of the big US players. But, you know, putting a GAMP framework in, and it's interesting, maybe, I don't know, do you guys know ISPE? And yeah, so, you know, they'll talk a lot about the V framework and GAMP and other bits and pieces, but it really comes to the frame as to why Industry 4.0 is related to how we translate that into Pharma 4.0 and where we move with that. I mean, the gamification on the clinical trials, system development lifecycle, and the app development was really, really interesting, which then moved me into Cognizant, and I was solving complex problems on behalf of GSK's Chief Digital Technology Officer and their Chief Supply Chain Officer in terms of looking at the footprint, but also as they look to divest their portfolio, launch Haleon as a business, and then move into program transformations, bringing harmony in portfolio project delivery to health and safety, quality, value and services associated with cost and time delivery and other KPIs. So that, in a nutshell, I've done quite a bit and quite well placed to talk to you about Pharma 4.0. So next slide, please. Can't really talk about evolution in the industry. Industry 4.0 is smart factories. It's thinking connected. You know, it's all about smart cities. If you apply the smart cities mentality to being able to do everything and anything in your life within a reach of 20 minutes. That's the aspirational goal for smart cities, is to be able to do X, Y, and Z within 20 minutes, or 20 minutes of everything. So how do we really get here? And I've got to take you back to the days of the Gutenberg print press, because I think that was the first. Next slide, please. I think in terms of the printing revolution, it starts there. A lot of people will talk about industry 1.0, but you know, this is 0.0, and it starts with that because this leveraged operational efficiencies where, if you look at in Germany around 1440, the goldsmith named Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable type print press, which started the printing revolution. Modeled on the designs of the existing screw presses, this gave a production capacity of about 3,600 pages on an average work day. So really scaled the abilities to get print press out there, which then obviously educated folks and then resulted in what I would say is the farm to factory. So next slide, please. So the farm to factory was really the industry 1.0, where we moved from farming to factory. And I think with regards to, it started in England from steam and water power, machine tooling, mechanizations, and mechanizations of the factory system. So it starts here with regards to Industry 1.0. Next slide, please. This is Tesla's workshop. And Industry 2.0 is really around electrification. So next slide, please. With the results of electrification, we're able to do a lot more autonomously. So next slide, please. I'm just going to go through this. Some of you may or may not know the generic evolution as to how we've got to 3.0 and then 4.0, but I'll talk through it. So next slide, please. Work machines really allowed mass production and assembly lines to flourish. The electrification allowed us to really scale the way we're doing things in terms of an automated capacity. Next slide, please. This is Dagenham, next slide, please, 1939. Yeah, April 1939. And, you know, if you look at what Henry Ford was looking to do, put the world on wheels, mass scale it, drop it, economies of scale, and then really look at moving assembly lines. We fast forward to then Industry 3.0. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Automation of manufacturing processes, analog to digital. This is where we moved from the 1920s and analog switching capabilities to more digital enabled capabilities. And, you know, I think when you look at this and you say digital electronics, what evolved late 70s was around computers, networks. So it leads us nicely into 4.0. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. So digital integration. I mean, Boston Consulting Group have 3 dimensions on this. The factory of the future, the 3 dimensions on their vision of the structure is around digitization of processes. When you look at things like omnidirectional and autonomous transport or reconfigurable modules and sustainable green production, I'd add a 4th layer into that, which would be around quality. But effectively, what we're talking about, Industry 4.0, is the combination of the visible technology and the invisible technologies coming together, the interconnectivity of it, the massive information and data that comes from the industry Internet of Things, and the cyber and the physical coming together to generate the big data, but also machine learning, artificial intelligence, and the way machines are run much smarter, and then obviously the digital transformation associated with that. So next slide, please. In the last 7 months, and I do want to touch on this, next slide, please. In the last 7 months, there's been a lot of noise around Industry 5.0, from shareholder value to stakeholder value. Industry 5.0 is very much human-centric, and I guess, you know, why does Industry 5.0 move from shareholder to stakeholder value? I think the world is becoming very much where, what's in it for me? How do I, as an individual, we can talk about personalized healthcare, we can talk about the individual experiences, the individual journeys, et cetera, but why does Industry 5.0 from shareholder to stakeholder value? Well, it's improving the safety and well-being, it's reducing the cost due to resource efficiencies, empowering workers to remain in control, competitive industry by attracting the best talent, adapting, training, and evolving skills. There's so many plays at this, and it's interesting. I was asked to talk about 4.0 when, you know, it is moving into 5.0, but this is outside of pharma, right? So the world moves on, and we are still, I guess, struggling to implement 4.0. So it's a solution provider from people and for our planet in terms of verification and accuracy. I think I also asked AI to do something quite interesting. So, you know, again, me wanting to test the capabilities of this, I wanted to kind of wrap up 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0 in a Star Wars themed character result. So I asked ChatGPT and Bing to come up with a picture that would create an AI reference to 3.0, 4.0, and 5.0 in the Star Wars theme. And then next slide, please. This is what came up. It's interesting how it thought that C-3PO would be an R2-D2 type. But the way I was trying to go on it was around R2-D2 is your, you know, Industry 3.0. If you look at the hybrid, you know, humanoid type that C-3PO is, you could say that that's 4.0. And if you look at the fact that there's a human-machine in Vader, you've got your kind of 5.0 represented in Darth Vader. But anyway, it was just a play on using the technology that exists to see whether or not it would come up trumps, and by the result of that, you can see it hasn't. Next slide, please. So in a nutshell, all right, Industry 4.0, it's all of this: simulation, additive manufacturing, cyber, cloud computing, Internet of Things, big data, autonomous robots, systems integration, and augmented reality. That's Industry 4.0. So what's Pharma 4.0? Well, Pharma 4.0 is a framework. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So it's effectively a framework. When we're talking about adapting from Industry 4.0, the digital strategies, using the unique context. I'm not going to reference the ISPE definition here, but you guys can look it up. They're doing quite a lot, and the next slide will show what they're doing. But it's a framework. It's unique to the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry in the sense that, because we're different, we're special. Are we as special as aviation or other industries in the sense that we're governed by regulatory, we're governed by bodies that allow us and give us a license to go out there and market and deliver our drugs. It's an interesting one because we remain special. And when you talk about RPA, 3D printing, big data analytics, active ingredients, and utilizing the nanotechnologies and maybe potentially smart inks, I mean, a lot of companies in the food industry are already doing that, where they're 3D printing food synthetically. I think I heard something about someone producing fish through a 3D printer. And I think from a taste test perspective, they were like thumbs up on it. So, you know, just watch this space as to whether or not we will start 3D printing molecules and moving into a batch one mentality. I mean, it's almost incomprehensible, the amount of data that we create every day. Just to give you some figures on the computational side of stuff. Each year, the figures keep growing and are ever increasing. The US has over 5 times more data centers at, 2,701 than any other country. Germany comes in second at 487, the UK third with 456. And then you've got China coming in at 443, and then Canada at 328, making up the rest of the top 5. The amount of data generated annually has grown year on year since 2010. And the fact that they've estimated 90% of the world's data has been generated in the last 2 years tells you how significantly we are scaling and how fast we are moving within this space. In 13 years, the figures increased at an estimated 60x from just 2 and I'm not going to go through the zettabytes and the chronology of how we do that, but zettabytes is significant in 2010. We're at 120 zettabytes generated in 2023, and it's expected to increase 150% by 2025, hitting 181 zettabytes. Video is responsible for over half of this at 53.72% of all global data traffic. These are insightful because you'll see how small businesses associated with this. Together with social at 12.69, gaming you'd think would be larger, but it's at 9.86. And these 3 categories make up more than 3/4 of the overall internet data traffic at 76.27%. The data generated is skyrocketing, and with every passing year, we see these figures reach new heights. The factory of the future in terms of AI and machine learning, algorithms, neurolinguistic programming, deep learning and vision, AR, VR, and immersive technologies is all leading to a point of convergence. And I think if you look at population, you know, the figures in terms of dates, it's slightly out, but 7.6 billion people on the planet, 50 billion devices. You know, the calculation was something in the region of 6.58 devices per person, and Cisco's annual forecast predicts 71% of global population will be mobile subscribers by 23 or by the end of this year. Edge computing and blockchain, I'm not talking about Bitcoin here, but crypto, smart contracts, immutable and distributed ledgers and audit trails should help with regards to deciphering the truth against what is fiction. And I guess it's the continued momentum in terms of the key Internet of Things markets, including industrial enterprise energy and also the first responders, as more companies are collecting business critical data from the edge of the network. On-prem to cloud, scalability and cloud mobile first. The mobile phone is your computer. It's a heavy device in that sense, and a lot of stuff, especially if you listen to the Google CEO, will talk about mobile first because that's their go-to. And why not? Everyone's carrying the device. Why wouldn't you utilize it to do even more? Just taking the ISP definition on the digitalisation of data processes and connecting information, creating new levels of transparency, adaptivity, and also faster decision-making to give better control and improve quality. I'm just going to touch on now that framework, and I'm sure folks will discuss it later on today as well. But if we go to the next slide, please. So here's the framework, the data integrity and digital maturity model. This is the ISP standard for what is Pharma 4.0, and it incorporates the resources, the information systems, the organizations and the processes, as well as the culture. Next slide, please. Since 21, they have had a working group. Anyone in the room part of that working group or had contribution to it? Or okay. How was it? How have you found it? I mean, I think if I will talk about it on one of the slides in a second, but it's interesting as to when Industry 4.0 came into existence and now Pharma 4.0 came into existence. There's a huge time lag behind that. Quality is the fourth dimension, and as I said, that was the addition to the BCG model, computer systems validation, AI, predictive analytics, maturity models. There's probably four modalities for maturity models, A being reactive, B being proactive, C being predictive, and D being prescriptive. I'm just going to ask the audience, how many are reactive to the 4.0 piece, or are people in the room proactive? Okay, 1, 2. Predictive? Okay. And then prescriptive. So by the lack of hands, I guess everyone is still at a point where you're on that journey or starting that journey. So next slide, please. The drug production sector. I mean, this was taken from my serialization days when you're looking at counterfeit drugs becoming a health issue, looking at counterfeit medicine, and then obviously supply chain challenges with impacts. The audience here is clean room and manufacturing, right? So when I'm looking at drug production and I'm looking at the sector underpinning major transformation due to various factors that are changing the ways drugs are being developed, manufactured, and delivered, some of these factors are automation, obviously. This is the use of machines and software to perform tasks previously done by humans. The automation can improve efficiency, quality, safety, and the scalability of drug production processes. It can also reduce cost, errors, and waste. The digitalisation piece is quite interesting. You could do the next slide, please. The processes by which transforming data into digital formats can be easily stored, processed, analyzed, shared. Digitalization enables seamless integration, real-time monitoring, data-driven decision-making, as well as paperless operations. EBR records come to mind, and then how they're audited is an interesting conversation too, in terms of drug production. It can also be enhanced in terms of traceability, transparency, and also in terms of compliance. And when you look at modularization, this is design of the drug production systems or facilities using standard and interchangeable modules. I had a really interesting discussion about single-use technologies last night, and also with regards to batch size 1. When you look at the modularization, it can increase the flexibility and the adaptability and mobility of drug production. It can also shorten the time to market and reduce the capital expenditure and optimize capacity and utilization. Looking at serialization, this is the process of obviously assigning a unique identifier. In the 70s, Wrigley's gum was the first product to have a barcode on it. Now you have the data matrix code. It exponentially allows you to put and store more data on that data 2D matrix verifier, so you can do a whole load of things around supply chain management, cold chain monitoring, and other bits and pieces in terms of the amount of data that you can store within that QR code. Looking at each drug product or package that can be verified, tracked throughout the supply chain, the conversations are getting to the unit level at the moment, where we talk about tablet, aggregation, and other bits and pieces, but it's all centered around improving the security, authenticity, and visibility of drug products, and it can also prevent counterfeit, diversion, theft, and falsification. These are just some of the factors influencing the drug production sector as they present opportunities and challenges for the pharma companies and us as operators. So next slide, please. Okay. Just looking at some of the solutions, I mean, AI can be used in pharma for various purposes, in the sense that research and development, AI can help pharma companies discover new targets, new novel molecules, optimizing drug candidates and predicting drug properties, as well as other interactions. For example, Extentia uses AI to generate and optimize drug molecules that meet multiple criteria, such as potency, selectivity, safety, and pharmacokinetics. Drug development also AI can help here, in the sense that pharma companies can accelerate and improve drug development processes associated with preclinical testing, clinical trials, regulatory approvals, and also post-marketing surveillance. For example, Recursion Pharmaceuticals uses AI to analyze the high-throughput cellular images and identify novel disease models and drug candidates. Diagnosis, we don't see it much within the clean room or the manufacturing, but obviously within the hospital setting. And I didn't put in the Microsoft AI tool that was in a hospital setting for serialization. But the diagnosis piece is really interesting, where it can help pharma companies improve the diagnosis of disease and the conditions such as cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other rare diseases. For example, Benevolent AI uses AI to analyze biomedical data and literature and generate hypotheses for disease mechanisms and also for biomarkers. Disease prevention, AI can help assist pharma companies prevent or delay the onset of disease and conditions. And I kind of touched on it when I talked about the whole genome sequencing for terminal ill patients, where we're now talking about hours. So I expect that figure from 17 hours to drop. We'll probably get into the less than 10 hours at the next leap, if you like. And obviously, epidemic prediction. I mean, you know, from the pharma companies predicting and monitoring the spread of epidemics and pandemics, you know, proof in the pudding in terms of the COVID, influenza, and Ebola. We're just getting better and better at it. Blue Dot uses AI to analyze global data and detect outbreaks and infectious diseases. Remote monitoring. I remember back at Novartis, we were talking about utilizing the kinetic device associated with the Xbox in terms of monitoring patients remotely, so that, and this was way over a decade ago. We're talking, 2008. So you can see where the technology is moving to, and right now with apps and people like Babylon, remote patient GP interactions, it's moving in that direction for remote monitoring. AI can help pharma companies monitor health and well-being of patients, as well as consumers remotely wearing wearable devices, mobile apps, and other telemedicine platforms. For example, Bioformis use AI to analyze biosensor data and provide personalized care and interventions on chronic conditions. Manufacturing, okay, this is us. AI can help pharma companies optimize their manufacturing processes, systems, such as quality control, supply chain management, inventory management, and obviously the predictive maintenance side of reliability and operations. Schrödinger uses AI to simulate molecular interactions and design optimal manufacturing processes for drugs. In terms of marketing, AI can help pharma companies enhance their marketing strategies, moving straight to patient and avoiding the middlemen, so to speak. And I think there's advocates of that, especially with people with terminal illnesses that become influencers that allow customer segmentation, personalization, and recommendations on pricing, promotion. Thank you. And in terms of AI conducting market research and providing insights to pharma marketeers, that's also game-changing at the moment. Next slide, please. I can run through these quite quickly, actually. So why are we here? Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated Industry 4.0 and then has had an effect on Pharma 4.0. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Convergent evolution. I mean, here what we're talking about is business and technology coming together seamlessly and interacting. If you go to the next slide, please. I just wanted to talk about the serialization and the timelines. You know, it started in 2013, but if we talk about when Industry 4.0, it came at the Hanover Fair in 2011. And we only started with the ISP, really started talking about it in 2019. But, you know, when you look at serialization and the falsification directive and that QR code, as I said, it's amazing. But also the interactions that you have at the factory level with equipment, line management, manufacturing, and then that corporate entity at the level 4 and level 5, it plays into the cloud, the evolution of technology and moving forward, but also external factors. Next slide, please. When we talk about this in communication, next slide, please. When we talk about Moore's law and style of hyperconnectivity, you know, from 1G to 5G, which allows us to do so much more now in terms of the Internet of Things and machines talking to each other, and the difference between 4G and 5G with the bandwidth and the data sets, what you can do. 6G will be really interesting as to where we take our communications next. Next slide, please. So yeah, I've talked a bit about the impact on drug production. Any questions on that?
If I may, Hitesh.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go towards the dark side as usual.
Okay.
If AI can be used to drive drug development, when does that become the mission that overrides the complementarity to the human condition?
Repeat that again.
So in terms of Industry 5, right,
Yeah,
which is supposed to be complement human activity
Yeah.
and values-based. But if AI can be used to drive drug development programs, my apologies, when does that become the mission and overtake the need for human input?
I'm going to probably talk to the regulatory folks in the room in the sense that you have to get to a level of verification is key. Then the confidence in the way those decisions are made by the digital tools will be significant, right? I think, when you look at it, it's about having confidence and proof in the pudding. I've used 2 or 3 examples here where I've asked the technology to come up with the answers to what I had in terms of a vision of a slide, right? And it's obviously fallen somewhere between the chairs on some of those things. Moore's law, let's see, I think maybe 5 to 10 years time we'll have that in play where it will be, and don't get me wrong, the technology is to enable the human decision-making processes, and if you look at the way the industry is evolving, it is ethical, input, output, garbage in, garbage out, but when you look at it and you say ethically, will AI decide to do X, Y, and Z? Until it gets that kind of emotional intelligence, ain't going to happen, right? Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Right, cool. I'm just going to run through these because I don't think we need to, well, obviously regulatory considerations, workforce transformations, because skill sets and training. Implementing 4.0, it's quite interesting. How many of you are on that journey or have implemented it? 1, 2, okay. And then overcoming the challenges and the risks, and thank you for that question, Kevin. So in terms of conclusion, I'm cautious of time. I'll probably run out of time, actually. But in terms of, I'm just going to run it through. Operators need to know the current and future regulatory requirements and the expectations for pharmaceutical and life sciences industry. There also is a need to understand and apply these requirements to their duty of work and ensure that the compliance and the quality standards and the data integrity and safety protocols and ethical practices are adhered to. Some of the key areas where operators need to be aware is GMP, good manufacturing practice, as well as the computer system validation side, the data integrity side, the risk management piece associated with a proactive approach to identifying, assessing, and mitigating, monitoring potential risks that may affect quality, safety, and efficacy, and then also the continuous improvement piece that comes with it. So there's some main aspects with regards to the operators and what they need to know, and obviously encapsulating that within digital automation, analytics, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and blockchain. So there you are. I don't know if I've got time for questions, Siegfried. No?
One question.
Time for one question? Anyone? Yes?
Do you see the reuse of some of the outcomes of the serialization journey that you presented, particularly around, having that hierarchy of, GTIN batch, serial number, 2D data matrix? Do you see that as falling under Pharma 4.0 or 5.0 with regards to using that data set, let's say, for future use cases?
I mean, the technology allows it. It's immutable, right? So it is what it is. As we have a Ron Seal moment, right? It does what it says on the tin. It's a UK idiom. But when I look at it for 5.0, what I've seen from the industry is that reluctance to share the data amongst the players. There is a lack of collaboration. I mean, I would love to say that the pandemic response, did allow for collaboration and everyone came together in response to coming up with the resolution that we did with regards to COVID, but the reality of it is we've lost that oomph. If we can maintain that in a bottle and continued that, yes, it would answer your question, right? The 5.0 for us, it's interesting. I haven't trademarked Pharma 5.0, I don't see the point in it. You know, the reality of it is that we've not even reached 4.0 yet. We don't know what we're doing at the moment with regards to that. And serialization is probably the best thing that happened to the pharma industry in one respect, not just for falsified medicines, but just what it leverages in terms of data. It's now taking those data lakes and data sets to the next level in collaboration to say, right, make it interoperable. You know, OpenAI is OpenAI because of the fact that it's shared across the platform and people contribute to it. Here at the moment, you've still got profiteering and commercial ahead of what is the best thing for humanity. And on that, okay? Cheers.